I love how she announces that every single time as if I don't know that I hit that button. So, welcome everyone to the July Diversity Chat. Jesus, like literally month 14 of doing this. So I'm a little shocked and in awe. But today we're going to talk about marketing, sharing resources to reach diverse communities. And yes, and also, as TJ said, he's going to monitor the chat. If there are any questions, you can drop it in there. Or since we're such a small and mighty group, just wave your arms and chat away. It's going to be a good thing. So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about marketing again is because with theaters reopening, my email box tends to get a little flooded with Ricky, I'm trying to reach X. Ricky, I'm looking for this. At least it's not Ricky, I'm looking for people of color. That used to be the one main thing that would always pop up in my email box or the telephone or text or whatever. But now it's expanded because, of course, diversity is more than color. It's a lot of different things. It's, you have people of color, you have all gender identities that are involved in it, varied abilities, varied ages, nationalities, ethnicities, and then you have the LGBTQIA plus. And if y'all add another letter to that, I'm going to scream. I cannot say it all. I'll get it, but after a certain point, I love you all. You're all accepted. But yeah, so diversity involves like all of those very different things. And what I have realized with marketing, even before the pandemic, but even more so now, is now that we are focused on trying to reach all these different areas, how do we do that? What are some of the options that we can use to reach all these different companies? And hold on, someone else is trying to get in. Okay, cool. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about tonight. And I want us to share different ideas of things that we are doing or have been doing in order to reach these different areas. And TJ, I'm going to tell you now, I misspelled silhouette. I can tell that now. I will correct it. You'll see in a minute. I have a slide. I misspelled it and I probably can't fix it. But what I want to do is just kind of go around the room here, the Zoom room, and just kind of tell me what kinds of things that you have done or have thought about that will help you reach different areas. Because I want to hear from you, because then I have my whole list of things that I have been doing and or have always done, and we can go through all of those. And these are things that any of you can use. And out of all the things that I use, only 2 I have to pay for. The rest are free. And community theater people love free. So I'm going to start with Dana, only because she's doing her hair.
Just because I have no hands.
Yeah, you can't stop me.
I mean, I think that in general, even before we even start talking about diversity, for being a relatively large theater company, marketing has always been a challenge for us ever since most of our like print marketing sources completely, disappeared. There's no more local newspapers or anything like that. That was a big part of RMT's marketing before. So I think that we struggle and we find challenge with this in all forms, even beyond diversity. So RMT does tend to be a company that has returning people, but it's hard for us to get new talent. And So I think that's just something that we have to work on overall.
Okay. All right. And what I like about RMT, and this is just something, and actually for everyone that's here, I can probably tell you something about your theater just from an actor standpoint. RMT always shows up in my emails more than most other companies, even though I do a show with them maybe once every 10 years. Somehow they always pop up at the top. Um, Either that or, and we'll get into this, or they haven't hit the go to sleep because I get too many emails, which is where a lot of the listservs go. But that's one thing I know about them. I always know what they're doing. Maybe it's because they're in my backyard, but I always know what they're doing. So let's go with Heather.
Hi, I'm with St. Mark's Players here in DC. I think a lot of the challenges Dana just talked about, we have where marketing is always our challenge. So how do we get the word out? You know, everybody's busy. How do we make it like a regular drumbeat? How do we make sure people know what we're doing and have people come back because we love our people and we want them to return to us, but also expand? So I know we started sort of a group spreadsheet with the board of like, hey, let's start a list of like options, local colleges and high schools and different lists of locations that we could try to start reaching out to more often. And we finally got our newsletter challenges somewhat resolved. So we want to make that sort of a more regular drumbeat. I know that one of my other board members and I are supposed to start putting together our like diversity plans, our expectations, and how to communicate to people about that. And part of that, I think, is going to be how do we make sure that the word is out to a diverse audience? So that'll be helpful. Our list, and then whatever other ideas we get from anybody else.
And Heather, I can't remember, well, I know that St. Mark's, of course, is at the church. Does the church promote St. Mark's Players?
They not like super outwardly facing, but within their church community, we can like get into their bulletin, and they love to have us come and perform a scene from a show in the service. So that's been a little challenging recently, but we're hoping to bring that back.
Okay.
Because they are also a great resource, and they always feel like they don't know what's going on with us. So we need to improve on that for sure too.
Okay. Cool. And then we're going to go to Katrina. And I know you're not with a specific theater group, but I'm sure you could give some insight into the times that you've assisted groups in getting the word out about stuff.
Yeah, so I used to be a publicity coordinator, but currently I'm not with any theater group. I don't know. Insight is kind of, not sure what to say for insight at the moment. It's kind of a broad question.
Yeah, but I mean, you did, I know that also Katrina's really good with filming things. She does video editing footage and stuff. So she's really good at packaging promos. She probably won't give herself that pat on the back, but she really is good at packaging promos that can be used in a lot of the things that we're going to talk about. Yes, I'm trying to get you hired, Katrina. But she has really good insight into that. And also the same thing that we're kind of doing here in just sharing of the struggles that we have. It kind of also builds that community that we have to where we can also share in successes and wins and kind of cross-pollinate. Because one of the things that I have always noticed within the DMV theater community is that we don't share a lot of things. So, you know, what St. Mark's is doing, what Silhouette is doing, what RMT is doing, you'll have an audition, and I'm just going to pull a number out of my hat. You have 75 people audition for a show that only requires 20 people. What happens to the other people that didn't get cast? They just get the no email. I love it when I have to tell someone that they can't be in a show, but here's some other things. Here's some other things. But that's just me as a director. But yeah, I always have, like, at the bottom of my no email, here's some other opportunities that you kind of have out there. And what that also does from a positional marketing plan is that even though that person got that no, the likelihood of them coming back is higher, because it wasn't just no, bye, see you. But also it shows that you're part of this larger theater community. And you don't have to pull a lot of them, but also I used to go to RMT's website to see what was happening at all the other theaters, because I couldn't remember what was happening at all the other theaters. And you guys, I'm not sure if you still have it, but used to have this, about town, or that whole page and link of what was happening. And I lived on it, and I would send people to it. They were like, I'm looking for a theater company in the area. I'm like, go to RMT's page, go here, and you can click and find half of them. That was always just my go-to, because I couldn't remember a lot of different things. So let's see, who else can I call on to share? Colleen.
Sure. So I know that one of the challenges / opportunities we have at RCP, it's where I sit on the board of directors for them, is that we've always kind of done things a certain way. And we're really trying to kind of break that mold. So we're trying to identify new ways to market, new groups to market to sort of engage our community further than what we've done. We have the same 146 season subscribers that come back year after year, and that's great. But how do we grow our audience? How do we grow our content and bring in not only new audience members, but new volunteers? And again, not necessarily people on stage, but backstage, because we need to sort of branch out. And that's one of the things. Kate is our new president now. And so she and I have been talking about that. She said, it's a struggle for me. And I said, well, it's something I'm very interested in. So, it's identifying who we need to market to, and then how we market to them within our community.
Yeah. And that is key. When a lot of times when we look at marketing, we're thinking, okay, I need to reach, we're sitting in Maryland, DC, and we need to reach someone in Tennessee. That's great virtually.
Mm-hmm.
So during the pandemic, I was reaching people all over. But what that also did is, now that things are reopening, the person that did my virtual show in California, though they can't do it, they have a friend of a friend of a friend that's here, because for the virtual shows that I'm doing with Greenbelt, I have people that audition that are like, a friend of mine told me about a show, that your virtual show, so I auditioned. I'm like, and where are you from? Florida. Or, people were like, oh, I'm inviting my college roommate. And these are people that are my age, in their 50s. Like, my college roommates always wanted to do theater, so let's do this. I'm going, bring them on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's finding those little pieces and nuggets, and we will get to that.
Yeah.
Ricky, can I just ask, a question to Colleen, but also, maybe even to TJ and Heather, because we all work with companies that are sort of associated with the building that we perform in, but not directly. Like, I wonder, Colleen, what does the community center provide for you guys, or part in what way? And I don't know, Silhouette Stages, I don't know if that's technically a community center or what. I've only been there once, but we have this relationship with the Civic Center where RMT performs, where we're like, okay, what can you help us with? What can you do? And they're like, well, what do you want us to do? And we're like, we don't know. We don't do it professionally, but you do. Like, you're a box office. So you tell us. And it's become like this, well, bare minimum. And like, maybe if we had an insight into what other centers are doing for their community theaters, we could offer that as options where they have a larger budget than perhaps we do.
So for those that don't know, RCP has a relationship with RCC. So the Reston Community Players performs at the Reston Community Center. What they give us is pretty much open access to the space once we move in. Of course, we do pay for it. It's not like they're just like, here are the keys and you can come and go when you want. They also provide us box office support. So, you know, if a patron were to walk up for one of the touring shows and they walk up to the box office and they're talking with Bill or the box office manager, whoever, Bill would, and they ask, you know, what other shows do you have? It's not like they wouldn't say anything about RCP. They definitely would say, oh, and you can check out the local community theater. They do shows here. Here's their schedule. They allow us to put our flyers out. We have the Rite Aid space sign, which is kind of around the corner, and we put up our show posters in that little glass box that's outside the building that people walk by and see. But there's not a lot of active marketing on behalf of RCC for RCP. Now, they do have a couple of new people. They have a new technical director. They have a new director of diversity and inclusion, and they want to collaborate with RCP on these kinds of things. So that may change moving forward. I think I just got an email earlier today about a meeting that's happening later this week that the board has all been invited to. So I'm curious. I'll know more about that as the week progresses, but kind of right now it's sort of a symbiotic relationship, right? You know, we rent the space from them. They make money off of us. They promote our shows, you know, a little bit, right? And they handle all the box office stuff, and they handle our ticketing and our season subscriptions, which is super nice. We don't need to have somebody on the board that handles that mess, but it's not an active participation on either. I mean, like when our president gives the address, they'll get up there and they'll say, you can also check out the touring shows. If you have questions, go to the box office. Again, it's more of a passive sort of co-marketing process.
Okay. All right.
Same with Silhouette. It's Leighton House. They rent out the space to homeschool theaters and dance companies in Columbia to come out, and I've been to a wedding there as well, which was really interesting. So it's they don't really market. I think they're part of the Wild Lake Village Center, so they do have some sort of newsletter that goes out. And if we remember in time to email them, they'll add that in there. They don't really market. That's pretty much all up on us, though, because it is such a smaller center in this grand, like, planned community of Columbia. So it's more on us. They let us put up posters, though.
Okay. And Penny, you were getting ready to say something? I wasn't sure.
Yeah, sort of. Okay. Of course, Greenbelt Arts Center, which is kind of my home theater, although I do a bunch of other theater things with other people too. We have Ricky doing stuff for us, so that's awesome. And I mean, she does a lot. I don't want to, I don't know what is I don't want to do. But I also wanted to say, I try to think outside the box and from the standpoint of trying to bring things to your community. So my latest thing is like the Labor Day Festival, for example. So if you're in a community, that's a way of reaching people who don't know about your theater. I mean, community events or local events are a way of getting inserting yourself in places where people hadn't even thought maybe of theater or realized that you have a theater. Also, from the standpoint, if we have an information day, and I actually hope to have theaters present information about theaters in the area. So trying to get people like you guys to give me information to have for other people to look at, not to mention, couldn't we give you something about what we're doing that you would put out at some kind of event that you were doing, type thing, trying to reach in, not just the audience that thinks about you and your theater, or even theater, but people who hadn't even maybe realized you existed or hadn't thought about live theater in context of Columbia or where, or Rockville maybe. I mean, I think Columbia, probably people think that is a cultural hotbed of some kind, but people might not think in general, just Rockville. I live in Rockville. I should, you know, Rockville's got lots of theater. Well, they might not actually even think of Rockville as a place that has theater, unless they're theater people, in which case we know Rockville's got excellent theater.
Yeah. Okay. And we have new Pam from Gaithersburg Arts Barn. Hi. Welcome to the chat. We're just kind of going around the room sharing what our respective theater companies or places of business are doing as far as from a marketing standpoint to reach different groups of people. And what is Gaithersburg Arts Barn doing?
Well, I will tell you, I just joined the team last week, so I am still learning all of that. So yay! And that's one of the reasons I wanted to come, because I'm like, I want to meet new people. Anyway, yeah. So, I mean, I'm the arts education program coordinator. So I guess I kind of look at, you know, how are we marketing our education programs? And the one thing that I'm seeing right now, a small little perspective, little bubble that I'm in, is that like the Arts Barn being located in the Kentlands, feel like that's where we kind of draw. I see heads shaking, yes, but I'm also know Gaithersburg is bigger than the Kentlands. And it's sort of, I feel like it continues the narrative that arts are meant for people who have money and luxury. And so that's where I'm kind of like, ooh, how can we expand and invite other people? So I guess I know the city of Gaithersburg has their Go Guide and everything that they send out. So it seems like the information is out there. I guess I'm also just kind of looking at the affordability of the offerings at the Arts Barn specifically versus some of the other community centers and where that varies. There definitely is a difference there. And I think that might be a barrier to attracting everyone. So yeah, I guess I'm learning all sorts of fun things.
Okay. Well, good. So what I want to do now, so I'm going to share my screen so you don't have to look at my face, but I'm going to share my screen so you can see this pretty much barrage of all the things that I have done or am suggesting could possibly be done. And so let me get to that. Share. Where's the share button? I never can find it, and it's always right in front of me. Screen 2 and share. Can everyone see my screen of 10,000 things? Okay, and it is 10,000 things. So I have used a multitude of these things that are on the side, and I'm going to take it down just a bit so you can see, yep, everything. To reach people of color, which oddly enough, just because I am a person of color, people think it's easy for me to find them. No, really not. If you're looking for people of color, I know my friends, but I don't know all of them, but I can tell you where you can find them. LGBTQIA, all gender identities, varied abilities, varied ages, nationalities, and ethnicities. So these are, when I think of diversity, I'm thinking about all of this in terms of where we can find people. And one of the things that actually assisted me in even starting doing these chats and kind of getting involved in this was the Facebook group, All Things DMV Community Theater. That is definitely a place where you can put stuff out there and you're reaching a broad group of people, and a lot of them that are in there, and they are literally from all over the US. A lot of people that are in that group are looking for companies that are looking for diverse talent. They're looking for companies that are doing diverse things or expanding their normal reach. So it's a great group. There's an eye on the group because people are looking to see who's posting and what's posting. Theater Folks of Color. I found this group during the pandemic. Pretty good group. Every now and then they get a little rogue because, you know, they get a bee in their bonnet. We all do. But I have been able to find designers out of that group, playwrights, an entire exhaustive list of plays written by persons of color throughout the world. They have literally an ongoing list of things. You have to be a person of color to post in that group, but if you know somebody that's in the group, hey, there's me, I can post. Galvanize DC is also another Facebook group that is in the area that posts a lot of things, especially if you're looking for people of color. Backstage, this is one where you have to pay a little bit. However, Backstage does bring all the performers to the yard. TJ can tell you that because we used it for Brooklyn, the musical. And didn't we have somebody from London or France or something? There was somebody not from the country.
South Africa.
There it was.
And France.
So, yeah. So wide range for virtual that works, but at least I know I get Backstage posts probably 4 times a day, to the point where I had to change it. We only get it once a week because stuff's constantly popping in. And there are a multitude of Facebook groups, and I utilize the Facebook groups probably more at work than I do at theater. I work for National Industries for the Blind, and we're trying to find where the BVI individuals are that need jobs. And we started going to different Facebook groups, Instagram groups. Somebody got on Clubhouse and did something. I was like, I don't have an iPhone, so I can't do that. But just different groups, posting at colleges or working with colleges. And it makes me go back to taking flight, Colleen, because it was at a college facility. But I sometimes think we get so busy about, okay, what's happening here, that we even forget. I have sent stuff to my old college in North Carolina about stuff that I'm doing. So it's taking that step and thinking literally outside of the box just to expand so that people know what you're doing. Listservs, those are still really good. I forgot all of them. I think the Dragonaut one is still going on. I have probably silenced that into the ether because I used to get it a lot. But if you do a Google search for listservs for different communities, you can find them there. Of course, Google searches. Churches are really good. Even if you are, and Heather, this kind of reminds me of St. Mark's, even though you are performing in a church, the other churches that are in the community, and that goes for, you know, all the community theaters. Sometimes you can be next door to a business or a church or a school, and they have no idea what you are. Because if they are functioning during the day and you're functioning at night, it's just a closed building during the day for them. So that's just a thought there. And community groups, there are so many. I have found during the pandemic at least 5 that are right here in my area of Gaithersburg. behind the mall, just different groups that are doing different things. There's a Latinx soccer group, and they have a cheerleading group, but I just started sending them stuff. And some of these people started coming to some of the classes that were being offered at Confidence Theatrics. And then some of them did some of the plays that we did at Greenbelt. And when I say schools, including your own, and this is really critical when you're trying to reach youth. And when you're reaching out to the schools, one of the things that I think we tend to do as theater people, we'll go to the theater teacher. And we're like, so we're doing this play and we're needing people. That's a great place to start. Go to every single teacher that you can. Get that principal on board with what you're doing. The amazing thing is, though there are people that are in that theater group, you might have someone that's sitting in that math class that is just waiting to be invited to something. So it's just thinking beyond that. And yes, if you're from a small town like I am, I'm from a very small town in North Carolina. If I send them anything that I am personally doing, all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, he's from the big city. We all have to go do something. It's work the small town angle. It works wonders for marketing. And that goes back to, hometown. And then programming is one of the things that I bring up a lot when it comes to diversity. The programming that you put out really can help kind of shape how you are seen and how the community sees you. And the programming that you pick, just kind of look at, is this programming that I am choosing, is it speaking to my community at large? So, case in point, if you're in a community that is, highly African-American, Sound of Music might not be what you need to have at the top of your list of shows for the season. Or if you're in an area that has a high concentration of Jewish or Orthodox Jewish, Fiddler's probably one of those that you want to do. Jesus Christ Superstar, maybe not. Maybe not. It's just knowing your community. And a lot of that really goes back to, as a community theater, to really knowing your community. And that kind of goes back to what Penny was saying as far as getting out there in that community, which kind of speaks to events, which is way down here. But getting back out into the community and doing the parades, the events. I've even had some people in Charlotte, they did, people from a theater company did it's not show and tell, but they were the ones reading the stories in the libraries on Fridays. They would have, story time. And it would be one person from that theater group that would go in there and read that on a Friday for an hour to youth kids. And those kids and those parents then attach that instance to that theater group. And they started to see an influx of people that would either come see the shows or enroll their kids, or as adults say, well, I'll come help you build this. So just little tiny things can go a long way. And yes, I have watch in here. Only because watch is really good, especially when we all have the awards banquet. I've always envisioned watch being that place where, not where you could advertise, but I don't know. And I'm talking to someone right now that could probably help me ferret this out, TJ. But watch is one of those things that I think could really assist with communicating things across the board to different people, especially for, watch judges, because there's a You have the multiple watch judges, and then you have whoever is managing the watch committee at that theater company. So yeah, I threw that in there today. Haven't used them before, but I was going to talk about it whether you were here or not, TJ. Newspapers, yes. The fact that most print newspapers have completely shut down really hurts. I feel you on that, Colleen, because I used to get a lot of stuff delivered on my front doorstep when I moved here. And literally in the past 5 years, I get nothing. I don't even get a phone book. I used to use that to prop up like a broken coffee table or something, but I don't even get that anymore because I don't even think they make them. But there are certain small communities that still do have, you know, the black and white. I know Greenbelt has it. As weird as this sounds, yes, Penny Saver is still out there if you want to use it for different things. Might get some of the weird from the Penny Saver, but at least it's out there. And then we kind of already talked about other theater, other community theater groups. Sharing that information. So let's just say I know, you know, Dana's with RMT and Colleen's with RCP. And if I need something, I can reach out to either one of them and say, okay, this is what I have. I have these people that are looking for something to do, or this is what I need. Do you have it? So it's sharing those resources. Because somebody emailed me this week looking for a costumer for a theater group. And I was in a Facebook group and I saw literally somebody was like, I'm looking for costuming work. So I connected her with that theater company. Subscribers are great because you have them. But kind of like what Colleen was saying, subscribers are stagnant. If you're not growing, it's almost like I'm going to send to the same 146 people. And subscribers to me goes along with our email list, the personal emails, the MailChimps, the constant contacts. Sometimes they don't grow as much. What I have done, especially at my job with those particular subscriber groups in MailChimps, is that you can, if you have the non-free version, it'll actually give you stats on which ones of those emails are dead. And you can also do special targeting that will find out when those people are actually opening emails and or when's the best time of day to send emails. I tend to like getting stuff first thing in the morning. And there is a large number of people that love getting things at 3. Depending on which service that you're using, it'll tell you when's the best time to send stuff. But sometimes you have to kind of gauge when you're sending people things so it just doesn't sit in spam. I have noticed Fridays are bad days to send things unless you send it before noon, because afternoon, no one's going to look at that till Monday and it gets buried and buried and buried and buried. Posters, I know Greenbelt, we still do posters. I think most companies still do them, but maybe not to the extent that we used to. Also postcards. I know Greenbelt still does that. But Greenbelt's also an area where the people that live there still read them. So again, it's knowing the area that you're in. Activity boards, I have seen them at grocery stores. I haven't been in a post office in years, so I have no idea if there's still one there. But any activity boards that you have out there, community centers where you can post stuff, coffee shops, Einstein Bagels and Starbucks. They always have that little community board there, and I'll always see something there that I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was happening. Also, for the high schools that are in the area, I know that they have their billboards out in front of their schools that they use for their shows. There are a couple of places in Baltimore, especially Essex, where they share that billboard with community theaters. So they'll advertise their shows in a community theater show. So that's just as a thought. Past cast and past members of your boards, those are really good places to, and it's not just communicating with them about, hey, this is coming up, communicating with them about assisting in pushing that message further out there. One of the things that I have been doing, especially with the radio shows that I have, I'm getting ready to do an entire segment where everyone that's on that particular segment is blind or visually impaired, doing a radio show. And I had my one coworker that was on it, and then I had one theater friend that was on it. And I just asked them, do you know other people that are blind or visually impaired that would like to try their hand at this? So sometimes it's just having that conversation of openness to come join and do something different. So yeah, I think I have at least 6 of them. And luckily 2 of them have already done it. So I told them, I said, you're gonna have to help me kind of gauge everything that's going on in the room. But yeah, so that's just, the interest is finding groups that you have not necessarily been cognitive of, and finding different ways to reach them. And yeah, finding different ways. Chats are really good. You know, I'm ecstatic that Pam is here. So this is someone new that we all know, that we can say, okay, Pam, what do you need? And I know for Gaithersburg Arts Barn, if I'm going to Aldi's or World Market or to the gym, I pass their big giant sign that they have right there, letting you know everything that's happening at the Arts Barn or over in that area. Which oddly enough, I'm gonna stop sharing though, which oddly enough, Pam, that is nowhere near Kentlands, but it speaks to everything that happens in the Kentlands. So you are reaching outside of the microcosm of the Kentlands. And you used to be at the Holiday Inn at the corner of Montgomery Village and 355, but then it shut down. But they also had stuff all the time out there. But yeah, those were just some of the things that I kind of came up with of different things that you can kind of do, but a lot of it is really trying to look at where you are and how you can reach out to different areas. And case in point, when you do reach out to those areas, it's the messaging is more welcoming than I need a person of color, or I need someone that has, you know, this varied ability, or I need someone that, well, it's easier to say that you need a 12-year-old young boy. That's easy if you're doing age. But when you're doing the other diversity realms that speak more to marginalization, it's making sure that that's a welcoming message versus a need message, because right now the need message comes off as targeted, and it's not a good feeling. I'll let Reggie in. All right, so with that, I see lots of faces. Questions. Hit me with your questions, thoughts, concerns. You're theater people, you can't be quiet.
I mean, I don't have any questions or thoughts, but I think that one of the things that our company wanted to reconsider in our assessment and conversations regarding diversity and expansion, it is that there is an element of basically it costs money to do community theater. It costs money to buy shoes, buy makeup, to travel, to be a member, to volunteer or whatever. And another thing that, you know, we're trying to find areas where we can provide a service to the community. And then we're hoping that by providing that service, that brings people in. So whether it's like alternative education, like, no, we're not all like trained theater educators, but we have experience, and a $5 class is something that might interest somebody who can't afford to pay $100-$200 to do a children's theater show. And I think that for us, we just feel like we're crawling, but it's something that we need to do for a while before we can walk or run. And I think that's just where everyone probably is at.
Yeah, now I would agree with that 100%, because a lot of it is theater is, yes, if you look at it in context of how it's set up, it is not set up on an equal level playing field where all can equitably enjoy it the way that we would like it to be. Because when we're speaking of community theater, you know, community has all levels from, you know, poverty to rich. So how do we build theater that speaks to all those levels? And a lot of it could be, and I kind of face the same thing with Confidence Theatrics, because I was like, okay, I'm going to do affordable classes because I want to make sure everyone can get in. I want free classes. I want classes where people can pay what they can. It didn't help that I was doing that during a pandemic. But then I've noticed that as things started opening up, less and less people, and I get that, because once people get back to normal, online things kind of drift away, and I'm cool with that. So I then had to start thinking of how am I going to maintain the services I provide, but still make it to where someone that, you know, can afford the $60 ticket won't look at $5 as if it's cheap and invaluable, but whereas someone that's on the impoverished level won't look at a $30 ticket and go, oh my gosh, I can never afford that. So I am coming up with the whole scholarship thing, but a lot of it just has to do with just making sure that whatever I put out there, that I constantly enforce that message of, if you want assistance, need assistance, if you need something else. Sometimes I know, like right now, I know there are like 15 people that have been to a lot of my classes that really can't afford anything. So whenever I do a class, I'll send them an email saying, hey, if you want to come take this class. So sometimes it's giving out, I'm going to say freebie, but that's not the word, but giving out the services of theater without the cost attached to it in increments, so that those people feel welcome and included, and they don't feel as if it's a handout. Because that's, you kind of balance that whole psychology of how people feel when they are incorporated into things and how they are incorporated. Another thing, and then I'm going to shut up, and not sure this is happening yet, so I'm jumping the gun a little bit, Dana. But another thing that is, I think it's really good, and it shows a lot about what you're doing as a company, is doing, so if you have a show that's coming up, so I'm gonna say Bright Star at RCP. So let's just say your production team is wanting to cast this you know, we want to cast it diversely. You put that out in your audition statement. But as a production team, to get together and do what I call reclaiming the canon theater chats, which I do them monthly. Now I'm going to do them twice a month, is where people just kind of come together on Zoom and you just talk about the show. What does it mean? How does casting it diversely, what does that do to the different characters? And it's almost like a scene study, but it's more of a show study. But what I have learned in doing those, I started them as a way for people to look at theater differently instead of the way that it was originally written. So just because Guys and Dolls originally was written this way doesn't mean you can't have, you know, Latina Nathan, or you can't have Adelaide, you know, who is physically disabled. So those are the different things that I'm trying to get people to think of as when you start being inclusive, it doesn't change the story, but your understanding of how these things navigate and how that looks outward. So doing like a reclaiming the chat thing, I think is really good because not only can you record that, that's also marketing material. This is us as a company getting down to the root of doing this show, or even if it's not about the particular show that you're working on, we're willing to sit down and have these discussions about these things and just be open and candid about it. People tend to gravitate to that in different ways. It depends on where they are. Because the last one I think I did, no, one before the last was Into the Woods. Not my favorite show. Not at all. Literally, every time I go, I'm like, okay, I'm going to sleep through Act 1 and then I'm not coming back in Act 2. It's usually where my head goes. We had a lovely reclaiming the chat about that. People were bringing out pictures, historical context. And I was like, oh my gosh. Well, guess what? I'm now Into the Woods. That is what I'm performing in the woods. But it was all because, well, one, the theater company is very much into ensuring that they tell the stories of the people that are performing. So that was appealing to me, and the concept of they did the work. Even though it was my chat that they were on, the fact that they were there and they were invested, they had the questions and we were talking about things. TJ was there. He was trying to be quiet, but he was there. But these are all things that I think can kind of help. And, you know, Dana says it a lot and she's 100% right. The whole crawl before you walk, you know, and then you have to walk before you run. This whole thing of diversity and inclusion is definitely a marathon that is going to kind of, every time you think you get it right, you're going to stumble, you're going to scrape your knee, and then you'll be fine, you'll get over it. I always say perfection can't happen unless you make a mistake, because you will not have an idea of what perfection is unless you've hit some road bumps along the way. So I'm honored that we're all here having road bumps, including me, because trust me, I bump into strange things every single day as far as my walk with diversity, whether it's theater, whether it's work. It's a struggle. And I probably drink a lot, but I'm not sure. That's a whole different story. But any other comments from anyone? I talked a lot today and I'm sorry.
I mean, I was just going to comment and kind of piggyback off of you're kind of bringing up the reclaiming the canon chats, because I think that you offer an interesting perspective. I don't want to like boil it down, but in terms of like packaging a message, because you know, the way that you present and offer the Reclaiming the Canon chats, I think is very specific in the messaging of what you're doing and what we want to do. Whereas I think very similarly, just to be very specific, about like a month and a half ago, we did a Facebook Live where we interviewed some of our production team for On the Town. And they shared a lot about this perspective, historical perspective of the show. But it wasn't particularly framed as, here, let us share some of what the conversation that's happening behind the scenes with you. So if you didn't know what it was, you wouldn't care. So maybe nobody listened. And so like, I think through our conversation, it's made me rethink about how to, I guess, show outwardly what's happening within the company on the inside. Because that's what I struggled with, I think, a lot over the last year, is that I don't want people to have to take it in good faith that like the work is happening. I want them to know that it's happening, because I really feel that this group of people is working hard at that. Mm-hmm. But it's like how to authentically show that on the outside. And that's like the struggle that I've found.
Yeah. And I can see where the reclaiming might appear packaged. It really isn't. And it's packaged because I put it in a nice bow, so you can put it on your website if you want to. But the conversations, because I'm that person that will poke the bear in a conversation. You can plan anything that you want out. I'm gonna poke you till I get to the core of what it is that you're trying to package and say. So it's like, oh yes, we really want to cast this the way it was intended. Why? Why? And I mean, I will go back to my favorite when I was interviewing to do a show, and I asked them, why did they want to do the show? Why did you choose the show? Well, it was on our season last year. Why did you want to do the show? Well, it's good. Why did you want to do the show? Well, we want to make sure that there's a show for everyone. What do you mean? Well, I mean, like we're going to do In the Heights, and then we're going to do, Sound of Music, and then we're going to do The Wiz. Oh, I see what your everyone means. So as much as you might prepare for the Reclaiming the Canon chat, oh, I'll poke the bear.
Are you trying to scare me?
Oh, not in that scary way, but no, TJ will tell you that the conversations they're just real.
Yeah.
They're very real and very open, and because they're not live and they're editable, if you say something that doesn't need to be there, I can edit that out. It's not I'm not going to give you anything that you can't use, but I just love it because it really level sets the entire production team to make sure that you all have a full understanding of what's being presented forward, because I can sit here and say, okay, On the Town, for me, didn't know On the Town was meant to be cast differently than one expected. So I'm already intrigued just because I was like, oh, okay, really? Or someone else that they are wanting to do, they said they wanted to do Hello Dolly. They said, well, we're thinking of doing an all African-American version, but there's never been one. I'm going, Google Pearl Bailey. But this is a group that just they hadn't done the work. So it's more of doing the work and just having that conversation about the work that you're doing as a group in order to kind of ferret out some of that. I hope that helps and doesn't continue to scare you.
No, you don't actually scare me. I love you. I just mean that more so that you're putting in perspective for me and helping me think about, well, how there is a way to authentically show the work on the outside in that way. Because what I've struggled with over the last several months was how do we show it to the outside community so people understand that like the work's actually happening, the conversations are being had, but do it in an authentic way. Yeah. So I mean packaged in not an authentic way, if it can be put that way.
Again, this is just me poking the bear. Just poking. Anybody else have any other comments? I don't want to keep anybody for long because, you know, we're all Zoomified for days. Yes, Penny.
I think, well, particularly for community theater, pricing, money is always a complicated subject, basically. And it's also difficult to get people to understand that quality and price are not the same thing. So for example, if you offer something and don't charge, or say this is free for someone, sometimes people don't come because they think it's not going to be good or quality. Or when you start to offer something for free because you're trying to bring people in or be accessible, and you want to start charging because you can't afford to keep on offering it for free, for example, they stop coming because it was free. What do you mean we've got to pay for it now? So I think money gets to be a really complex issue.
It does. And I just love the fact that, and I think I say this in every single chat, really, the freest thing that you could do if you have a Zoom account, do the old time radio shows. Don't care what color, don't care what sex, there are no rights, unless you choose anything that's above 1947. So there are no rights to anything, but it's also a second revenue stream online, which kind of expands things. All of a sudden, Pam's like, what?
As like a radio person who was actually around when there was actually the radio as the main thing that you could watch, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just, I'll always say there's way to work your moneymaker, your stage, and to work your diversity through Zoom. And eventually they might meet and cross over. But yeah, with that, again, I appreciate all of you being here. Like I said, I don't want to keep anybody for a long period of time. But I do want to go around, and before we get off, I would like for everyone to tell me one thing that they picked up from this that's helpful. Just one thing that they picked up from this that's helpful. And for the Colleen Hollywood Square block, I need two things because there are two people in that block.
Theater for all.
Yep.
Theater for all. Just everybody. Make it accessible to everybody and reach out.
Yep.
I think for me, it's, you know, especially when we're picking content or deciding to do things, is asking the question, why? Why are we doing this and who are we doing it for? And holding ourselves accountable for those decisions. And then reaching out and putting ourselves out there in a way that we're not comfortable with as a company. And I think that's going to be the sort of hardest thing for us to wrap our minds around, but we have to do it for this to work.
Yeah. It's really good. Katrina? Oh, I'm coming to you, TJ. I'm going to get Katrina.
The whole list of all sorts of different things to consider for avenues for reaching out to people in the community. It's yeah, good to think about all the different options you might not have been thinking about.
Okay, good. TJ?
I realize that we probably know our theater community, but not our actual community. And those next steps of trying to figure out how to get our actual neighbors for where we perform in Columbia. How can I have to do some research and to figure out how to reach out to all of them effectively and make sure that we can find a place for everybody, which is going to be hard with COVID and size restrictions and stuff like that. So, yep, trying to knowing our community is what I learned that I really need to figure out for marketing for this.
Okay, Dana.
So both with what Wayne and TJ brought up, I'm feeling more and more that the key is to kind of reclaim the community part of community theater. I feel like on multiple levels, like TJ was saying, like we don't know our wider community in our local areas, just the people who come back and come to our shows and come to our auditions. And additionally, I feel like there's like this almost sense of scarcity and talent and manpower and volunteer power. And that's silly because that's not true. Like you were pointing out before, like if 75 people come out to audition for a show, the show only is going to cast 25 to 30 people. So why should those people just then not have an opportunity to find other places for them to go? And why, as community theaters, our inclination is not to do that, but to rather like not want to send people, like it's like we're like all trying to hoard talent.
Yeah, and I will say good talent will always move on just because it does, but if you hoard, they will go faster. Because the same issues that we're having in community theater, professional theaters are having because they can't get people to come back. After COVID, a lot of them have moved on to additional careers. Oh, I'm going to do real estate, or I moved back home, or during COVID, I decided to have a child, so I can't do this anymore. So those are the things. So now professional theaters are starting to reach into our pools to say, hey, and the only thing they have to say is we pay, and they're gone. So I'm in order. I'm going to do Pam, Heather, Penny.
Okie dokie. Let's see. It was just lovely to meet people, virtually meet, see faces. Hi. But also, I mean, I just hearing, and I mean, I'm someone who's like, I'm in the first week, I'm already like seeing things and I'm like, oh, I want to change it. I want to do this thing, but also knowing patience and time, and harkening back to what Dana was saying, but also time, but like using time very intentionally to build very intentional and authentic relationships. Cause I think that's when audiences develop, when there is that very intentional relationship being built, or with designers or your teaching artist. Yeah, so just that intentionality in the way that we spend our time.
Okay. Yeah. I love that. Heather.
I think something that I hadn't thought of was when you talked about like enlisting the people you are reaching out to, then publicize more for you. So like we have like the social media graphics and things that we send to our cast and crew, but we don't send them out to like the people on the newsletter. So why don't we do that? Why don't we do something like that where we can broaden the reach? I think that's a great idea. And we had thought about local churches, but I think that's a great idea, especially for our community where there are so many churches right
Literally,
around us.
In the corner. There's
Like,
one on every single corner.
Every corner has a church. So yeah, I think there are a lot of great ideas. We're always up against, you know, bandwidth where everybody has their full-time job and they're trying to put on theater, and it's like, okay, who is going to be like the dedicated person who does marketing stuff that we can, because that's where we've had a hole for a long time that could be like the lead, and then we bolster that with other people based on the shows. So that's something we've got to figure out.
And Penny, before we go to you, everyone, if you're not using it, and I have fallen in love with it, Hootsuite. Get the free version. You can get the paid version, but get the free version of Hootsuite. It will connect your Facebook, your Instagram, your Twitter, a couple of other different things. So you create the post. You can create up to 5 future posts free, and it'll automatically post to them.
Love it.
Hootsuite, Hootsuite.
Is that an app, and for what platform?
It's not they might have a Facebook app. Someone told me about it and I did a Google Hootsuite on.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, that's my 5 minutes in the morning. I go in, I pick something off my website that I want to highlight. I create the post, say when I want it to post, and I walk away. And
Love that.
It does it. And get used to the free version before you get the paid version, because they go from free to like ridiculous amounts of money.
I'm going to look into that, because I don't know if I'm the only one who has realized it, but I think Facebook has taken away the feature where you can schedule a post. And I was like, what is going on with that?
Yeah. And Facebook is doing a lot of different things. I do like the groups that they have that you can find. But yeah, Hootsuite. And I forgot to put that on here. That is paramount for anyone that's in marketing, especially if you are like me, one-person marketing team.
0.
Yeah. All right, Penny.
Okay.
What was the one thing that you picked up from today that was beneficial for you?
Well, it's really hard because I'm an information collector, and there was a lot of, like, a bunch of grapes. Pick one out and tell me which one you liked best. But I think actually, because I'm always looking for more people and areas and groups to contact to do things, I think that list really helped me find some more things that I hadn't thought of that I really would like to. And that's only one of the things. That's not like that's the only thing, but I think that that's the one thing that I can apply soonest.
Okay. Well, thanks. And I mean, I will post this. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Penny.
My problem is if I bring people from outside, I bring new people in from outside for other people, having them welcome the new people that they haven't seen before, that they don't know about, to the organization. There's a like, I don't know who you are kind of response sometimes from the people. You say, we want new people, we want people from outside, but when they show up, sometimes it's not all that welcome.
Yeah, and different groups have that in different ways, and we'll continue to work on that. But yeah, that happens in a lot of things. It's happening right now at my job. We have someone new, and not my favorite, but I'm gonna smile through it.
Yeah.
All right, Dana, you said you had one more tool.
Yeah, you mentioned Hootsuite. So another marketing tool. I do a lot of the graphic design work, I go like this because it's not really design work, but like the graphic design work for RMT, we use Canva.
Love Canva.
It's a great free website that has a lot of different utility. You can just use the templates, or you can kind of play around with it more if you have more of like a creative eye. But yeah, I love Canva.
How do you spell that? C-A-N?
Canva.
Yep. I put it on the PowerPoint that I had, and I put it in yellow so you'll see it. I highlighted it, and I'll do that with Hootsuite. But yeah, so this will be posted on, the video will be posted on the Confidence Theatrics website. I will also send it out to the group that signed up to attend. And I'll also post the kind of list that I showed everyone. And literally you can use any of those plus more that you have to reach any of those groups, varied ages, abilities. So yeah, I have come to be able to find just about anyone, anywhere, if I needed to, which is scary and also great at the same time.
A very particular set of tools.
I know. It's like, we need someone with 1 arm, 3 fingers, and 2 feet. Okay, I can find that. Like literally, I have found some unique asks out of using some of these things. Very unique asks. And I read way too much in different groups, and I'm waiting for that person. I'm looking for this. Gotcha. I don't even have to know you. But it comes with the caveat. If you do not pan out, you are banned from me for life, however you are. Wait a minute. There are good resources for making marketing. Yes. I, believe it or not, Pam, I am going to be doing an accessibility one later on, primarily because my coworker, who is totally blind, has fallen in love with theater because I drug him along kicking and screaming. But he wants to do like an accessibility talk just to assist people with understanding what it's like to have a JAWS user trying to use your different sites or read different things, etc. So we're still working on that. It's going to take a while because I think he's going to freak out that people might be listening to him. But that is coming. All right. So with that, everyone, thank you so much. Very, very appreciative of all of you. Have a wonderful evening, and I'm going to cut off